Okay, so I've been wanting to do a Q&A video for a long time, and finally getting around to it. I think what I'll do also is put some links down in the description to other videos, my videos that explain things that people ask about a lot, so that I can have them all in one place, and I can refer to this video when I get a common question. Okay, so the question I think I get the most is, where do I find good rock for flint knapping? Okay, now the question is a little bit hard to answer because not only is it difficult to come up with the proper names for identifying the flint and chert and agates and all the other stuff that can be used for flint knapping, but the locations are not always reliable. Like if I were to produce a map of all the locations of all the types of knappable materials, you could go to that location and not find any of it in many cases, okay? Because a lot of these deposits are on either private property, or they're developed over, or they are inaccessible because of vegetation. And sometimes in the past, people have revealed their spots. Rock hounds and flint knappers have gone in and cleared everything out that's usable. That's happened sometimes. It's happening more and more here where I am. So to divulge locations is not a good thing. People ask me that too. Not just where in general, but where specifically. If I tell you specifically, chances are someone's going to go in there with a truck, load up literally a ton of stone, bring it to their house and never knap it. Okay, so most people will never reveal their spots where they collect rock. So that's the first thing. Second, good rock, as I was about to say in the beginning, is difficult to identify because some of it is really bad when it's raw, but it's excellent when you heat treat it. So that's good rock if you can heat treat it, but it's bad rock if you try to work it raw. Okay, and there's other things that can make a rock seem bad but is actually really good. Okay, some rock will knap extremely well. It'll spoil you because you can take a chip off extremely easily, and then you'll get into the habit of thinking that the flakes are going to come off very easily, and you'll get down to a really thin preform, and you think, okay, now I can get it really thin, and then end up with step fractures in the middle, islands of little areas you can't clear off because it's so thin you can't run flakes. So sometimes the best stone is actually the hardest to work if you're making those kind of newbie mistakes where you can't eliminate deflects in the middle because you don't have enough meat in the workpiece to run good flakes. So if I were to recommend good stone and where to get it, it's really not that reliable. So the best advice I can give you on where to find good rock, first focus on what you can get a lot of in the beginning. If you can get a lot of glass, if you can get a lot of quartz, if you can get a lot of something knappable, even rhyolite, if you can get a lot of it relatively easily and without taking away someone else's stash, so to speak, then use that just to get started. Okay, now once you get the hang of it and you think, yeah, I'm going to continue doing this, then the best stones to get are hornstone, true flint, Georgetown flint, and anything that forms within a chalk and not a limestone. If you're in Europe or overseas somewhere and you pick up some stones that look nappable. Check to see if it has fallen out of chalk formations or if it's within a riverbed that has eaten its way through a chalk formation. Okay, and that's going to be a higher quality material, or what they call true flint. Okay, like Georgetown flint actually does form in chalk beds. Okay, and that's here in Texas. Hornstone is a chert, but it's excellent. In fact, hornstone and there's a couple other related types of rock in that area are my favorite. If I could just use hornstone and some of those other ones in that area for the rest of my life, I'd be happy. Okay. Agates are usually pretty good. They're a little bit tough in the beginning when you're first napping, but I like agates a lot, and they can be heat treated. There's a lot of agates from South America, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, that heat treat beautifully. So keep your eye out for agates. Okay, agates sometimes you can find in rock shops, along with obsidian, which is excellent also. But try not to get obsidian that has pockets of ash. Okay, if you're going to a rock shop, hopefully the owner will know something about the characteristics of the stones that they carry. Some of them don't. They just carry what customers have asked for, which is fine, perfectly fine. But try to get someone who knows more about the characteristics if you're just starting out. Okay, so far, hornstone, true flint, agates, obsidian. The best obsidian I've worked is the triple flow obsidian. If you can get that, I recommend that. Let's see, Rainy Buttes chert is excellent. I think it's, in my opinion. Now the worst stuff to nap would be stuff like the rough quartzite, the rough quartz, and some of the rhyolites. Although they do produce extremely sharp edges, getting them to nap is just a real chore. Let's see. So yeah, also like floor tile. I have some videos on floor tile. I wasn't going to mention this as part of a recommendation, but floor tile is going to actually be better than getting quartz and napping quartz. So I do recommend, it's kind of a mid-range between the best and the worst. Okay, so if you can practice on floor tile, that'd be great for you in the beginning. It's readily available. You can get it anywhere. It's pretty cheap. Okay, so now where do you get it if you are in a desert of stone? You have no stone at all for miles around. Where can you get some? There are online places like Kentucky Flintworks that I always recommend. Talk to Dennis. I've never talked to him myself, but I hear good things. I hear very good things, so I always recommend Kentucky Flintworks. Let's see. One thing that I've always stressed is check out your local landscape supply that has rock. Here in this area, we call nappable stones bull gravel or bull rock. Okay, here in Texas, in the surrounding states, they call it bull rock. Check out your local, if you can, if you have one. If you don't, go to a landscape supply yard and just ask for a bull rock. You can be anywhere in the country, maybe they'll carry it. Otherwise, you'll have to specify, I'm looking for flint, or I'm looking for quartz, I'm looking for basalt. High-grade basalt is excellent for napping, okay? But you've got to experiment with it. Not all basalt is created equal, okay? And just, if you can, most of these landscape supply yards will let you bring a bucket and walk around the yard on foot and pick out stones you think are nappable and fill a bucket, it's probably going to be like $10 for that bucket, and that's pretty cheap. Okay, I used to do that in the beginning, and I would pick up every single type of stone I could see that might be nappable, and after a while I got used to which ones are good and which ones are not. So landscape supply yards, eBay is a good bet, because it's cheaper to buy bad stone off of eBay than to go drive to a place and come home with bad stone. Much cheaper. Okay, I've done that many times. I've driven to places that had lots of rock, but it's either cracked, poor quality, cannot be heat treated, or just in general too small to make anything showy. You know, it's good for small points and stuff, but I've spent so much money on stuff that I brought home and was disappointed on, that it's actually cheaper to order sight unseen from places like eBay. Okay, just read the reviews, talk to some people. Okay, which leads me to the last one. The best place, I think, to find good nappable stone is at a nap-in. Okay, other nappers are the best sources for napping rock. Okay, try to get a hold of other nappers. Now, a lot of people have asked me to send them rocks, or to choose what I think is good, put them together in a box and send them what is truly good, so they know what it is, because they have absolutely no idea what good rock is and what isn't. Now, I've done that in the past, but I'm doing that less now, and I think I'm going to just not do that anymore because it takes a lot of time. So please don't ask me to send you those kind of packages where I put together the best rock that I think will work for you, or in general, so you can try it out and see what it's like. I wish I had time to do that, but I don't. I also don't have time to sell rock, although I could probably make some substantial money selling rock, going collecting, sorting, spalling, and all that, but I just don't have time, so sorry about that. Let's see. Something else I might be able to add on this subject is, if you can, learn to be very good at going into the field and testing rocks in the field. Okay, I know it's hard for beginners, but bring a little hammer with you in the field. If you actually have a spot where you can find rock, don't just bring it home. In many cases, you can sit there and peck at it and try to nap right on the spot and bring home the stuff that is the best and leave the rest there, marginal stuff. You can always come back for the marginal stuff later. Okay, I've learned over time that that's the best strategy for me. I used to just bring everything home and then throw away the stuff that didn't work. And I recommend that too for beginners. Just grab everything, and then when you come home, you can sort it out later. But if you can, develop a habit quickly on how to pick good stone in the field. Okay, and then you can show other people how to do that too. But in the beginning, if you're very, very new, just bring everything home, okay? Just makes it easier that way. Just try to get into the habit of being good later on, of testing your materials in the field. Okay, all right. Next question. Let's see, it's sort of 14 minutes on that question. I won't be able to do this with every single question. Let's see. What are the dimensions and materials of my tools? Okay, I've got a couple of videos on my tools, so I'll put a link in the description for that one. One note is my tools are always changing. I'll show a view of my toolkit and I'll say, this is it. This is my toolkit. This is what I use. And then a month later, it's changed. I've either replaced something or made some more tools out of a different material, or I'm exploring a different material, and it's just totally changed. So I'll put a link in the description to tool sets and the dimensions and stuff, but keep in mind that it's changing all the time. And yours will too. You'll find out some guys collect a bunch of tools over time. I used to do that too. I had a big bag or a big bucket of all my tools, but now I just go through and weed out stuff I don't use anymore and just focus on the current set of tools that I'm using. So my toolkit is not going to be huge. Like I used to have a 5-gallon bucket full of stuff, but now I'm down to a small toolbox or a bag, tool bag. Okay. Why can't I make long flakes? Okay. Now I just got a question today on that too. I get that a lot. How do you make long flakes? Well, flint knappers spend, I would say, 80% of their efforts on just that thing. Other than not breaking the workpiece, they spend their effort on making long flakes, which means long flakes with no step fractures at the end, or what they call a feather termination, which is a perfect ending to every flake. You just want it to be smooth on its way out and no steps along the way, no breakage of the flakes before it has a chance to make its full path. Okay. And I told the guy today, the secret to making long flakes is just practice for a year. Okay, which is a little bit of a snarky comment, but practice. Yeah. Now, if you don't practice the right way, many of you know that you can work for years and never get long flakes. And I've met a couple guys, at least, that have been napping for years and still cannot get those really nice long flakes. All right, so I am going to do more videos on the angles and platforms. I'm working on a device, or let's say I'm working on a training aid that'll show you the angles and stuff. It's like a little mechanical device where it'll show the direction of force and the Hertzian cone and all kinds of stuff. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, but that's coming, okay? I do, however, have videos on how to make long flakes and the angles in the platforms, and I'll put a link to those in the description too. But to answer that question, how do I make long flakes, or why can't I? It's mainly probably because you are not following through with the forces. Something is interfering with the way the fracture is propagating through the material. Now, just a fancy way of saying you need to be aware that you have to stay in contact with the flake that you're removing on the platform all the way through the process of the fracture. Okay, if somehow you slip off the platform, or you crush it, or you're at the wrong angle, or something related to your forces on the platform is not quite right, the flake won't be right. So the issue with many people is not being able to hold the workpiece and the flaker correctly all the way through the fracture or the detachment of the flake. Some people will try to flick off a flake and wonder why it's not traveling. Well, if you just flick, it's just going to produce a little pop out flake or short flake. Even though the fracture is extremely fast, you have to pretend that it's slow so that you will remain in contact with the platform. I know that when you watch videos and you watch my videos, and I've had comments that it seems like I do it very fast, and people try it that way and they produce just short flakes. There's a very subtle difference as you gain experience between what a new person and an experienced person does. It's very, very subtle. That's why it takes so long to develop the talent. Just a fraction of a second makes a difference between a short flake and a long flake. and the way you make contact. So don't do anything strange with your wrist. It's not really in the wrist when you're striking. Strike consistently with a follow through. Don't try to tweak it at the very end. This is percussion, okay? Don't try to tweak it at the very end while you're striking. Pressure, I would recommend the same tactic. Don't try to tweak the flake at the last minute. Okay, you can tweak your position as you're trying to remove the flake in the beginning when you build up forces, but when it releases, make sure you're following through and not doing some weird twisting or tweaking or prying or something that will mess up your contact with the platform. Consistent all the way through on the follow through. And in the beginning, don't try to do something very fancy, for lack of a better word, okay? It's not fancy. Flaking long flakes is not fancy. All it is subtlety and consistent practice on developing that sweet spot in that material and with the tools you're using. Now, does it matter what type of material you're using for tools? Yeah, it does matter, but as you gain experience, the material itself starts to fade away in importance on the tools, and the material of your workpiece becomes the most important aspect. If you know how your workpiece material will react, you can make adjustments for the material of your tools. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, the way I do it now, I've got enough experience to know how this material is going to react, that I can adjust the way I strike, I can adjust the way I apply force, you know, what angle I want to apply force, how it feels when I strike it, what is the feedback of the material. I'm pretty accustomed to each material now, and I can get back into it quickly. The learning curve for me now with more experience is not as bad as it was in the beginning. In the beginning, when I first started napping and trying to get long flakes, I was completely baffled. I had no idea if I was doing it right or wrong. You can do everything correctly and not get a long flake, okay? Until you have enough practice, then that correct way is not going to be fruitful, okay? You have to have practice in the correct way for a long time, usually. I recommend waiting at least a year or at least 100 different points. Okay, it's an easy rule of thumb. If you've made 100 arrowheads and you still cannot get long flakes, then there's something wrong, either with the material you're using. It's not usually not you, right? It's the material you're using, the advice you've been given, the technique that you've become accustomed to. Something is wrong there. It's not in your brain capacity to make the long flakes, because I believe that everyone can actually do it. It just depends on the proper guidance and time. Okay. Let's see. Do you do commission work? Work for hire and stuff like that? I used to, but I don't anymore. And I'm not going to elaborate on that. I'm just going to say I'm going to start recommending other guys who are doing commission work. I'm not going to do it anymore. Let's see. Sometimes I have some notes here. Sometimes I spend up to 3 weeks or more on things that seem very simple, but are actually quite difficult to get just right. And the most unforgiving people are usually the very new ones. And it's not their fault. I mean, they don't have the knowledge of what it takes or the experience to know that this request is going to be extremely difficult. And if I say this request is going to be extremely difficult to a new person, it sounds like I'm making an excuse because they don't really know enough to confirm the truth of that statement, okay? But trust me, some things that are seem extremely simple become very time-consuming for even an experienced napper. And it's not that I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do commission work. I do, but a lot of times I put other things above that priority. I've got things that are 3 or 4 years old that I need to be doing. I've put on the back burner because of family obligations and stuff, and I feel bad about it. I feel very bad that I haven't done a lot of the projects that I've been promising people I'm going to be doing. So I'm not going to take on any new projects or new commission work. I've got some commissions that are going to take months to get enough practice to accomplish. Okay, so I'm backed up a lot. But it's good. It's good to be busy. I know. Another reason I've been so backed up is because I have good days and bad days. I would say I have like 29 bad days and 1 good day a month. Until recently, my energy levels have been very, very low. They're getting better. But, you know, I had to save my flint-knapping time until the end of the day in most cases, because I cannot do anything during the day because of family obligations and work and so forth like that. Most of the time, by the end of the day, I'm just spent. So yeah, sorry about that. I can't take on any new commission work. All right. Let's see. Do you do lessons? No. But that's why I do YouTube videos. Hopefully that's sufficient. Maybe one day I'll do some one-on-one lessons. I do have people that come visit me sometimes, and I'll do some lessons that way. But I try to film my videos so that you can see my view. That's always been the focus of my videos from the very beginning. I want you to see through my eyes and see what I'm seeing while I'm napping. And I film that way not only for you, but for me too, because in the beginning I really didn't understand what was going on, and I could watch my own videos and see my hand positions, see what was going on. And a lot of you guys will recently have told me that you'll just cut the sound off and watch my hand movements. You won't even listen to the narration or anything. You'll just carefully watch the hand movements. And that's what I would do too. So I would recommend you do that as well. It's a good idea. Just watch the hand movements, because the actual movements speak louder than words. Okay, I could be saying something wrong, but the hands don't lie. The only difficulty is knowing how much force I'm using, or how little force I'm using, or how much grip I have on the workpiece, and that kind of thing. Those are difficult to gauge from a video, but over time, as you practice and as you watch from my viewpoint, you should be able to match up what you're doing and what I'm doing, and be able to figure out what's going on. Okay, it's hard to explain exactly how to learn from a video. But you know, in the beginning, I watched a lot of YouTube videos before I started actually flint napping, and I thought it was fascinating, and I got into it, and it was extremely difficult. But me personally, it took me 3 years of napping before I could make what I wanted to make. Okay, so and I was doing napping at least every other day, at least 8 hours a week for 3 years before I could make what I wanted to make. Okay, let's see. Will you make such and such point type? Yeah, I'll get to that. I've had lots of requests for different point types, and I write them all down. I've got a huge list of, not huge, but comparatively speaking, I've got to learn at least 15 different types that people wanted me to make on video I have to learn from scratch. Typically what I do for myself are small little true arrowheads. I don't do the big points. Personally, I don't really like doing the for myself. I like doing them, but I don't like exploring the large types of arrowheads or spear points or knives. I prefer the small ones, both because the material is easy to get, and I don't have a lot of chips and waste and stuff all over the floor that I have to clean up. Okay. So yeah, you can make a request on a point type, and if I don't have it already on my list, I'll get to it. I'll put it on the list, and I will get to it. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to stop it here, and I'll continue on the next video. I still got quite a few questions, but the time is running out on this particular one. Okay. Okay, next question is, can you identify this material, or what is this material that I have? And some guys will send me a picture and stuff like that. Most of the time it's not too difficult, but it's getting more difficult because the common types now are on the internet. You can just look it up, and if you have a common type of flint or chert or obsidian, you can find it on the internet. So I'm getting more and more difficult questions as time goes on, and I wish I could answer some of these, and I've made promises that I would research certain materials for people, and I haven't gotten around to it because it's very difficult, and I'm not a geologist, and I don't know any. Well, I do know one geologist, but the geologists that I'm acquainted with are related to oil field exploration. Okay, they're not really into various knappable type of stones. Okay, you have to be a very specific type of geologist to know how to answer these Flintknapper questions. Okay, and I've spent a lot of hours researching various archaeology groups in various states and the names that they call various materials, and it just gets mind-boggling because some of the materials look extremely alike. Some of them knap extremely alike, but they come from completely different sources. So I don't want to lead anyone astray. So what I'm going to say about this is I'm going to tend to say no, I am not going to research your materials anymore because I'm just not good enough at identifying material. I do keep my eye out for certain materials that I have. Like I have got a collection of rocks, and especially in the rock challenges, there are some materials that I'm not familiar with that I keep an eye out when I'm researching, so that when I get to the rock challenge video, I'll be as knowledgeable as I can on that particular material. But if you just ask me, okay, I live in Oklahoma, where do I go to find what types of stone, and how do I positively identify the stone from, or how do I positively identify the stone if I have like an artifact of a certain type of stone? How do I identify that material? Can you help me with that? And usually I try to identify it, and I'll tell you if I can't figure it out or not. Sometimes I have guessed, and I feel bad about that, but I've guessed and it wasn't correct, so we had to go through and research it some more, and we still couldn't figure it out. So yeah, it's a very difficult area, and a lot of archaeologists make mistakes in identifying materials as well. So it's a difficult area. So maybe someday I'll have time to be able to do these kind of things, but I won't be able to identify stones anymore. I'll try on the rock challenges But other than that, I can't do it anymore. Okay. Let's see. Are you going to be at any nap-ins this year? For 2019, I'm not going to be at any nap-ins that I know of. Probably not. Let's see. Where did you learn the behind-the-knee technique? Okay. I used to get this question a lot more in the beginning. I actually invented the technique out of frustration. Okay. I was working hard bull rock without heat treating, because I didn't know about heat treating when I first started, with abo tools in the very beginning. Okay. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube where nappers were using abo, or natural or aboriginal techniques, natural materials, natural tools, and I wanted to do it that way in the beginning, and I became extremely frustrated. I tried vertical punches. I didn't have very much success. I'm not coordinated for some reason with vertical punches. I tried rocker punches, which are a very interesting technique, where you have something holding on to a short little rocker type piece on attached to a device. Okay, usually that piece is antler, and it's either tied to one end of this device. The one I was using was 2 sticks tied together with an antler tied to one end. Okay, and you put your workpiece in the middle, and that one piece of antler you set on your workpiece and then strike it from above. Okay, and that would remove a flake, and the channel between the 2 pieces allowed the flake to travel freely. Okay, that's the kind of rocker punch I was using in the beginning, and there was you can put a leather pad in it too. Okay, I was using that type of rocker punch and applying so much force that I actually snapped the whole thing on trying to work some raw chert, and I became so frustrated. I just sat there with that little rocker piece of antler. It was about maybe 5 inches long, and I thought about maybe asking one of my kids to come over and hold that little piece of antler so I could strike it hard enough to get this flake off, because that was my goal. But then I said, you know what? I'm just going to stick it behind my knee and hold it like that, and lo and behold, it worked. Okay, so then the rest is history, as they say. Okay, and then I was working with small antler pieces, and I was able to pick up some longer antler pieces to put behind my knee, and then those would wear down, and I found I could just drill a hole in the back of that antler and add another piece of wood or something, and it would extend the life of that little piece that I was using for that punch. Now, as I did more research, I started calling it a horizontal punch, and then a supported horizontal punch, because it actually comes back to the original position. After you hit it, it'll come back to the original position. You don't have to reposition it every time. You know what I mean? So it's supported. Now, some punches that are horizontal will drop away or need to be repositioned in such a way to be effective again with the next strike. It doesn't automatically come back up to the position. Like, I guess the kind of technique that I use is a third hand technique. So either someone can hold it, or I can hold it with my knee and produce the same results. So it's like having a third hand. It's not like having a device like a rocker punch, if you know what I mean. A rocker punch is an actual device, and the learning curve of using a device is different from the learning curve of using the supported punch. That's either supported with someone else's hand, or you're holding it in some other way, either with a strap on the leg or holding it in such a way that you can fully strike and follow through without hitting another part of the device, if that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, I developed that in 2009. So from 2009 to 2010, I used the behind the knee punch. And then after I started going to nap-ins, there was a local nap-in near me. Everyone was looking at me kind of funny because, you know, how are you holding that behind your knee? And other guys would try it and they couldn't hold it behind their knee for some reason. I guess I'm lucky that I have a certain kind of anatomy that I can hold it behind my knee. My calf, I guess, my calf muscle is shaped in such a way that I can actually do that. A lot of guys were not able to do that. And people would say, I don't know how that works, or I've never seen that before. And as time went on, it became less and less strange. It's still pretty strange to some people. I still get comments. But anyway, and then I started making videos. I think my first video was May 2011. Okay. So I had already had some experience with it before I started making videos. And my first videos were mostly abo videos, but then I switched over. When I switched over from abo in the beginning to copper and metals, it was just such a relief. I was struggling a lot and not having much fun. And you might think, why would you do something that is such a miserable type of hobby? At the time, like other guys my age, I was going through a period of time where I didn't feel productive. I needed to get into something that I was able to get fulfillment from, some kind of hobby, right? I've always been interested in these Native American things since I was a kid, so I started to look into how do I get back into making these Native American objects, and archery was the field that I was most interested in. So yeah, at first I was just making bows and arrows, simple stuff, and store-bought tips and blunts and stuff like that. And then when I got into Flintknapping, it just consumed everything. Basically, I just had to focus only on Flintknapping, and it attracted attention. People wanted to know how to do it. There were so few people actually teaching it. And I just started making videos because I had so many requests. Okay. Let's see. How do you sharpen arrowheads? And what's the difference between the sharpness of glass and stone, bone, slate, and all that? All right. I promised someone a while ago that I was going to make a video on how sharp each one of these are, how sharp stone is compared to glass, is compared to floor tile, and all this kind of stuff. I will do a video eventually on the sharpness of each one. The difficult part of that is actually developing a way that you can sharpen it the same way I'm sharpening it. How do I teach you how to sharpen the same way I'm doing it so that you can do the same test? That's the hard part. The easy part would be just for me to gather a bunch of arrowheads together and show you, see, this cuts the tomato like this and this cuts the tomato like that. But your sharpness on your arrowhead is not going to match mine unless you do it exactly the same way. So I'm trying to develop a technique that is simple and straightforward that you can duplicate yourself so that you can duplicate these tests on sharpness. Because it does matter, especially with hunters. You know, the most humane shots are going to be made with the sharpest arrowheads. It just makes sense. So that's something that everyone should want to know if you're hunting. If you're an archaeologist or if you're a collector and you find arrowheads and you test the edge, and you want to be able to kind of see, is that use wear that's making it dull, or is it just that way? Or I know I can make it sharper than that. Why is this dull? Or this is so sharp I cannot even approach this sharpness. You want to be able to be knowledgeable on you know, these types of questions and issues. So I'm working on a way to sharpen these edges simply and straightforward so that you can duplicate it. Okay, that's what's stalling me on that one. Okay, but yeah, I'll do a video on that. Let's see. Can you do some videos on ground stone tools like celts and gouges and axes and war club heads and stuff like that? Yeah. The problem I have with that one is time. It's much faster to knap a tool than it is to grind one. So yeah, I promised a while ago that I would do some more ground stone tool videos, but I found that, especially with my setup here, I don't have very many large natural stones that I can use for grinding. So I'm going to have to use slabs of concrete and stuff. And I found that was kind of cheesy. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to wait until I have a good workshop of the proper stones for grinding. So I can show you the natural, or not natural, but the abo way of doing it with just a stone you find in the field, flatten it, or dish it out, whatever it takes to create a surface where I can grind the tool into shape. So that's what's stalling me on that, is actually finding the proper base for grinding and the types of sand that you can use, the types of grit. There's various types of grit you can use, and there's slurries. You add either water or sometimes you can add fat to the slurry. And there's different ways you can grind stone. You can peck at first. There's pecking stones that are much harder than your tool stone. Some are softer. It's actually a complex subject. So yeah, I am going to do videos on that, but what's stalling me is the gathering of the materials I need. Okay. Let's see. Will you do a video on tomahawks and war clubs and that kind of stuff? Yeah, now that's something I want to do quickly or soon. I'm going to try to get a tomahawk type video up very soon because I'm interested in that subject. Not only because they're cool, but because it's another way of showing how stones could be damaged through impact. Like when you see impact fractures on these artifacts, you assume it's from a projectile. You don't assume that they've stuck this little arrowhead onto a club and they hit something with it and made an impact fracture. Most of the time you assume it's because they threw it as part of a projectile, or you stab something, handheld. You're not thinking that the point was on a club or on a stick, for example. So yeah, I want to be able to do that and conduct some tests on that type of weapon. I have got some ideas. Oh, I'll wait on that. I was going to go into it a little bit more, but no, I'm starting to run out of time again. Okay. Oh, and another thing is the literature on war clubs and tomahawks is sparse. I'm not finding much. And I think tomahawks were developed relatively recently, if I'm not mistaken. I think axes and weapons of war that look like hatchets are a trade item, I think, from Europe that were traded to the Indians. And it wasn't something that was made to look like something the Indians were using already. Okay? I'm not sure that's the case, but I think that's the case. So tomahawks, I think, are a relatively recent addition to the Native American weapon kit. Okay? The pictures that I usually see, or the pictures I see, usually have a warrior with a club of some sort with either one spike in it or several spikes in it. Okay, that kind of thing. to me, is what they would use in war. Okay, not something that's shaped like a European axe or hatchet. Prior to European contact, I think the tomahawks were clubs with either bone or stone points attached, or simple rawhide covered wood with a ball or oval shaped head attached to the end as a war club, okay, to smash instead of pierce or cut. They were smashing weapons for their tomahawks, okay. But I'll do some more research on that and come up with some ideas. Okay. All right, so I think that's it for the Q&A. Yeah, I'm going to put these videos together into one video. If you have more questions, please put them in the comments. I try to answer as many questions as I can in the comments, and that's the best way for me to do the Q&As, actually. But I wanted to make this one video so I could try to dump a lot of the links into the description so that I can just refer to this one video. Okay, but again, if I missed something or if I said something wrong, just put it in the comments and I'll address them. And hopefully we'll have a very good comment section. Hopefully we'll have a very good description section for this Q&A, because I don't think I'll do very many in the future. I just wanted this to be kind of definitive on the most frequently asked questions. So hope it answered your questions. If not, again, ask in the comments.